What's up guys, it's Logan from CodeBox.ca. Today we're going to hop right into the third tutorial and we are going to do a little bit of styling. We're going to be using a programming language called CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and basically what it does is allows you, let me close these quick, it allows you to style all of your different elements inside of your HTML file. It's pretty simple to use. It's written out basically just like plain English. So we're going to go in and do some of the basic stuff in that today. So what you need to do to get one of these cascading style sheets is right click on your source files, click new, cascading style sheet. Name it style, S-T-Y-L-E. You don't have to name it that, but that's just kind of like a standard. So when you first create your style sheet, it'll come with all this stuff. You don't need any of that, you can delete that. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to tell this index.html to look in this style sheet, because if we don't link these two together, they'll never know they exist, and none of the stuff that you program will work. So what you need to do is you need to go in your head, you need to type link, and then this is a link tag, and this is for linking style sheets and scripts and stuff like that, mainly used for style sheets. So first of all, we need to tell the link what we're pointing at. So we're going to go REL, which stands for relation, equals, and then you're going to select style sheet. So you should have link rel equals style sheet. And then we need to tell it where this style sheet is located. And this is with the href that we used in the anchor tags last tutorial. So href equals and then style.css. That's all you need to do. So now our index.html is going to talk to our style.css. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the background color. This is going to be accomplished by changing the style of the body. So this is the body tag, so all of our visible HTML is inside this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our style.css. We're going to type body because that's what we're working with, and then we're going to put two curly braces. Anything inside this will correspond to the body. So to change the background color, all you gotta do is type background color, and then you could choose a hex code. So you can go 000 FFF or whatever, or you can just type a actual color. So if I wanted to make my background color red, I would go background color equals red. So we're gonna save that. We're gonna open up our index.html. And you can see that our background color is now red. So it's that simple. And like I said, there's tons of different colors you can choose from. If you just type this colon again, NetBeans should give you a list of colors to choose from. So all of these are web-friendly colors, so we can choose any of these. I'm going to choose lime green just because it looks cool. Let's see how this looks like. Sweet! Okay. So another thing that we're able to style is our headers. So let's say we want this to be a different font and a different color. So we can style our H1 tags. So what we do, we start a new line, type H1, curly braces. So to change the font, it is called font family with a hyphen in the middle. And what you do is there's a couple web safe fonts you can choose from. You can look them up online. I'm going to choose Arial because I like that font. It's nice. There's no serifs. So if we go back here, our H1 should now be an Arial, and it is. A thing about choosing a font family is that you should usually have a backup in case their web browser doesn't have Arial installed. To do that, you type a comma and then choose a secondary font. So we're going to choose Verdana. So basically what this does, if the web browser doesn't have Arial installed, it'll go to this one, which is as like a backup, and then you also need to have a third backup. For this one I usually just choose Times, because Times is a font that every web browser has automatically. So if we refresh this, it'll still say Arial because most web browsers have Arial installed, but just in the weird case that it doesn't, it would go to Verdana, and if it can't find that, it'll go to Times. So let's say we want to change the color of this font. All you gotta do is to separate different tags on the in your style you put a semicolon, and then you start a new line. So we're gonna go color equals, let's make it white. So we have our font family, semicolon, and then color white. So if we refresh this, our CodeBox tutorial is white. Say we want to make it a little bit bigger. We go semicolon, we can go font size, and you can choose a pixel size. So let's say we want 40 pixels. So you go 40px, and that makes it a little bit bigger. Or what you can do, if you want relative sizes, you can go bigger, or what is there? I think there's X. Yeah, see there's the small, smaller, extra large, extra small, extra large, extra small. Basically, if you use these font sizes for all of your fonts, they'll all be relative. So if you choose this one large and you make your H2s larger, then it'll be a couple pixels larger than your H1s. I like to choose just pixel ratios. So we're gonna say this is 40 pixels per letter or whatever. I don't really know how fonts work, but that's what it is. Okay, so now what else we can do? We can style our paragraphs. So we're gonna go P. We're gonna make this font family. We're gonna choose Verdana, Arial as a backup, and then times. We're gonna change the color to red, and we're gonna make the font size 20 pixels, so half the size of our H1. So if we refresh, this change is a little bit bigger, red, and Verdana. Okay, so let's say we want to style our unordered list. So we're going to do this, and we're going to choose, let's choose a font family. Font family equals Arial. So these change to Arial. We're going to go color, we're going to make these white. And I'll tell you why this happened in a second. Color white, and that's all we need. So the reason that these didn't change is because they're actually links. So remember how we wrapped these in our A tag? We'll go back to that just to show you, remind you guys. So these are actually in an A. So what we can do is we can style our A to be color white. And if we go back here and refresh, they'll be white. So let's say that you don't want the underline on these, because underline links, they can be ugly sometimes. Sometimes you don't want them. The underline is called text decoration, and we're going to go text decoration none. So we don't want any text decoration on there. That'll get rid of our underlines. They're still links, but they're just not underlined anymore. So now we're going to go into a little thing called divs. A div is basically the building blocks of HTML. And if we go to CodeBox, a div is basically a block inside of your web page. So this square here would be a div, this title is a div, this is a div. Pretty much everything that I use is a div. And if you remember when we first created our HTML file, it built a div for us. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to wrap our little title thing here inside a div. Whoops, div and div. So you wrap anything that you want inside of your div there. I'm just going to move these over. And then we're going to put our list and our image inside of a different div. Div and div. And we're going to tab this so it looks a little bit nicer. So basically what this is going to do is going to put this line and this line inside its own box, and the rest of it inside a different box. So you can think of a div as a box or a block. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you how they actually work. So we can divs are stylable just like anything else. So if we type div, we can set the background color. Let's change it to gray. So as you can see, it's through this site in a div and all of this stuff in a div. We can put a border around a div. So border color. Sorry, just ignore the stuff I just did. We're gonna do border color black, semicolon, border style If we go with colon here, we can see there's dash, dotted, groove, and solid, ridge, alt, set. There's a bunch of different options. We're going to do solid, and we're going to do border width, and this is the thickness of the border. We're just going to do a little border, 2 pixels. Basically, if you don't have any, you need all 3 of these to make a border work. If you're missing any of them, your border won't actually appear. So if we refresh, we're going to have a little border around all of our stuff here. Perfect. Okay. So let's learn about margins now. So let's say that we want to space out these divs a little bit. We don't want them to be right on top of each other. What we do is we do something called a margin. A margin is the space, the mandatory space around an object. So if we go margin bottom 5 pixels, anything below this div, anything below any div is going to be 5 pixels down. So if we save this and refresh, this div is going to move down 5 pixels. And also the bottom of this div is going to have 5 pixels of space too. So if we change this to 10 pixels, you can see this went down another 5 pixels and this went down another 5 pixels. And we can set margins for the left, right, top, and bottom. And if you want to set it for everywhere, you just go margin. So let's say we want 20 pixels around the whole div. So you can see it, there's 20 pixels from the top to the bottom, the left, right. So there's 20 pixels surrounding the whole thing. Okay, so now let's say we want this text to not be right against the edge here. This is called padding, and what padding is, it's kind of the opposite of the margin. It's the extra space inside of the div. So a margin is stuff outside of the div, padding is stuff inside the div. And we'll show you what I mean by that here. So if we type padding left, because we want to move this over to the right, so we want some padding here on the left side of the div. If we put 20 pixels there and refresh, everything's going to be moved over 20 pixels from this edge. So if we, and it's the same thing for margin, there's margin, padding left, right, bottom, and top. And if you want it everywhere, you just type padding. So if we refresh, so now there's 20 pixels from the top, 20 pixels from the bottom. Cool. So now we kind of have our stuff here. Okay, so let's say that we want all of our text to be in the middle. What we can do, if we want everything on the whole page, we can apply it just to the body. So, and to align text, it's text align center. And this will center every text on the whole page, and images. So as you can see, everything that we have is now centered. If we want to just center, let's say we just want to center our unordered list, we just put it in our unordered list. Text align center. So if we refresh, the only thing that's centered is our unordered list. But we're gonna align everything for now. So we're gonna put it up here. Makes things a little bit nicer. So if we refresh, everything's centered again. Okay, so let's say that we want to style this div, the top div, but not the bottom div. What you can do is you can actually name your divs, and you can give them tags and IDs, and you can do a whole bunch of stuff with divs. So we're gonna name this div, we're gonna give it an ID of top, because it's gonna be the top of our page. That's usually what I name, like the header or something. You can ID it whatever you want. The thing about IDs is that there's only one element on your page can have the ID top. So if I try to give this div the ID top, it'll get mad at me. It'll say duplicate ID. So you can only have one ID per page, mind you. So this is the only div that can be named top. Okay, so if we want to style just this div, or apply a different style, we're going to type, you don't just type top, you type hashtag top. And the hashtag means that you're looking for the ID top. So if you just type top, it wouldn't actually work because top isn't an HTML element. but hashtag top works because it is an ID. So let's say we want to not make it expand this whole page, we want to just wrap it around here. So let's say we want to make it a little bit not as wide. We can change the width of this div. So let's change the width to, I don't know, 300 pixels. So as you can see, it shortens down this box. And let's change it to a little bit wider, just so that our text doesn't get wrapped. Well, that's pretty good. So as you can see, our div is this, only this div is 500 pixels, not both of them. All of the stuff that's in this div still applies to it, but this will if we had width in here of 900 pixels, this top width would override this width. So anything that's duplicate between these two is overwritten by top, and anything that's different is just applied to that single div. So if we refresh this, you can see this changed to 900, but this one stayed at 500. So we're going to get rid of this. Another way you can do width is by percentages. So if we want to make it exactly half of this page, we can type 50%. So if we refresh, this div is now exactly 50%, and when you resize, it stays 50%. So it's always going to be 50%. It's recommended that you use percentages because as everybody has different sizes of monitors, it makes styling a little bit easier. It's even for mobile because it just, if it expands and contracts, I know this one is, but that's because it's set at 100% automatically. So yeah. Okay, this isn't moving. Okay, so see how this div is pushed to the left? Let's say that we want to center it. To do this, there's not really an easy way to do this that just says center or whatever. What you gotta do is type margin, because remember, margin can push it to the left or to the right. You type margin auto space auto, and what this does, it's an automatic margin, and it basically just tells the HTML to put it right in the middle. If your div is 100% of the width of the page, you don't need to do that because obviously it's going to be automatically centered. So now you can see it's 50% of the page and it's always centered. Another thing we can do is we can change the height of this div. It's the same as width, but you just use height. Height, you can use pixels because that's just usually how it works. Usually you don't want to be changing the height. So we're going to make this 200 pixels high. And you can see that it gets a little bit bigger. Anything inside of this won't be centered vertically. Okay, so we're just going to get rid of this height because it made it look a little bit funny. We're going to make it like that. We can also change the background color of just that div. So let's make it background color, let's make it light gray or light blue. You can see there. So now you can see this is light blue. Let's say for this unordered list, we don't want these dots here. So what we can do is we can go to our UL modifier here, and we can go list, style, type, and we're going to go none. And what this will do is it'll get rid of those dots for us. So basically, yeah, so there's no list style type, so it gets rid of the dots. It'll also get rid of the numbers for an ordered list if we typed that for OL. But since we don't have one, I can't show you that. Let's say that we wanted to make this kind of like a navigation. So we wanted it to be one here, one here, one here. What we need to do is we need to access each one of these things individually. We can't access the whole list. We need to access these individually. And if you remember, each one of these individual ones is called an LI. So what you can do is you can actually access things like this. So it's an unordered list and you put a space and LI. So what this does is accesses any LIs that's inside of the UL. So this will modify each one of these things separately. And to make them display inline, you do exactly that, display inline. So now if we refresh, these are all going to be inline. As you can see, they're a little bit close together, so we're going to set a margin on them, and we're going to put 30 pixels between them. So now they're a little bit more spaced out. So that's great. Also, you should apply a list style type none to these as well. just in case. So now we have a little cool kind of a navigation here. Let's actually make this appear. Actually, no. Actually, yeah, we're gonna get rid of this, so that it just looks like a navigation. So now we got a cool little navigation. Contact still works the same. As you know, on most websites, usually when you hover over a link, it changes somehow. To do that is actually very simple, and they're called pseudo classes. So what we do is, since that we're editing a link, we need to edit our A. And to access a pseudo class, you put a colon, and then there's a bunch of them you can look online. The one we're going to use for this is called hover. So basically, this is going to be the class that's applied whenever we hover over an A. So let's change the color to red. So now when we hover over any A on this page, they'll change to red. So that's simple. Okay, so let's say we want to change the size of this, what is this? This image here. We could access the img tag, but this would change every image on the whole page. We don't want that. So what we can do is we can give this image its own ID. So we're going to name this CodeBox. So now our image has a CodeBox ID. So we can access it by going hashtag CodeBox, and it already comes up for you. And we can change the width to 300 pixels. If you just set the width, it'll automatically resize the height, and it'll keep your proportions. So as you can see now, it's 300 wide and 300 tall. It's because it's a square image. If we could change the height to 500 pixels, but this will distort it. So basically, usually I just change the height or the width until it's the right size. Cool. So now our CodeBox thing looks a little bit better there. Okay, we're gonna make a div here, and we're gonna name this test div because we're just gonna do test. I forgot my colon. We're gonna need to make an end div. Okay, so let's go. We're gonna make a h1 in here. We're gonna name this test1, and we're gonna make a p in here, and we're gonna name this test p. Okay, so now if we go back to our page, you'll see we have a new div, test1, and a test p. Okay, so let's say that we only want to change the h1s inside of test div. To do that is very similar to the way we did the ULLI. What we can do is we can go hashtag test div space h1. So what this does is edits all of the h1s inside of test div. So if we change the color of this to purple, refresh, this h1 up here stayed white and this one turned purple. We can also do the same for test div p. You can go color equals yellow. And there you go. Another thing we can do with this is if you want to apply the same style things to multiple elements, you can put a comma, and we can go comma test div p. So this will apply the color purple to any h1, any p's inside test div and any h1s inside test div. I recommend not doing that. It's a little bit harder to read. This way you can individualize the two different things. So we have a purple and yellow, and you can see up here this p stayed red, this p stayed white. Another thing we can do is we can apply the hover to a div. So say if we hover over our test div, we want to change the background color. What we can do is we can go hashtag test div, whoops, colon, hover. And let's say when we hover over test div, we want to change the background color to pink. So now if we refresh, if we hover over this, it doesn't change because this isn't test div, but this is. So when we hover over this, it changes the color. We can also, let's say we can change the width. I don't know when you would want to do this, but we can change it to 700 pixels. So now when we hover over it, it'll go 700 pixels. There's not really a use for the width, but you never know. So you could do, like, an example would be if you're hovering over something in this, and if you hover over this div, it highlights whatever you're hovering over. It's a nice little style technique. So we're gonna leave it like that, or we're gonna save this. Okay, go back here, and then you can see it still hovers. Cool. So I think we're gonna leave it off at that. You guys can play around. It's pretty simple. Like, if you, most of this is in plain English, so you can look up all the different pseudo classes online. Hover is really the only one that I ever use. There's one called active that applies the style whenever you hold a click down on it. So if we go test div active, we can change the background color to yellow. So now if we go on here, if we hover, it stays pink, but when we click on it, it goes yellow. You can do this for links so that when you're clicking on it, it changes to a different color. So if we went A active color equals red, or we already have red, yellow. Actually, go yellow, green. So if I refresh and click on these, it changes green. And it goes to our products page. Cool. So we're going to leave it at that. You guys can play around with some of this. You can style literally every single HTML tag. If you want to apply a style to the whole page, you can apply it to HTML. Usually you just apply it to body, but you never know. Remember to link it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. If you go to w3schools.com, they have an awesome CSS reference. It's pretty simple to get used to. A lot of it is written in plain English. So, like, there's so many different things you can do. And we'll be going through more as we go, as we start stylizing our pages and stuff. So you guys will be learning a lot more of this. This is just the basic stuff. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. And thank you guys for watching.